Hey guys, it's Jessica. Welcome back to my channel. Today we're going to be doing a subscriber Q&A. So before we get started today, I do just want to take a second and sincerely thank every single one of you for being here, for watching my videos. I did not actually think that I would ever reach 1,000 subscribers when I first started this channel, because I'm not doing it for that. I'm doing it for the chance to be able to talk about books and reading and how much I love books and reading with all of you all. And that has been so wonderful. And I am so appreciative of all of you that watch and comment. And I'm also appreciative of those of you that left questions for this video, because it was going to be very awkward if I had a Q&A with no questions. And I'm going to try my best to get to answer all of those questions today as much as I can. I have separated them into 3 different categories. So we have questions about books, questions that are more about BookTube, and then questions that are kind of more general questions about my life. And I have not actually planned any question answers to any of these. So this is all off the cuff, very non-scripted. So let's go ahead and get started. Okay, so bookish questions. I'm going to be on my phone to read these. Did you ever go through a longer period of time after becoming an avid reader where you didn't read at all or not much? And if so, what book got you back into reading? I feel like we've all had periods where maybe reading just wasn't something that you could put at the forefront of your life. I've always been a big reader. Definitely was a super bookish kid and then continued to read, but I would say I didn't maybe read that much kind of in that general in college period. And I think we all know that when you're in college, you're reading a lot of books for class, and I just could not read for class and then also read other stuff as well. I did get super into fan fiction at that time, actually, and I was both reading and writing fan fiction. So I was still reading something, but I was not necessarily reading complicated books. And then I also, in the year before I started this channel, and kind of, I would say, a little bit since 2020, so when we had the pandemic and everything like that in 2020, I would say that I found it very difficult to read. And you would have thought that when you're at home a lot and you've got a lot of time, you would have spent a lot of time reading. I did get super into BookTube, but I myself found that I could not read at the same level that I had been in the years before that. And it really didn't pick back up for me until, I would say, the summer of, I want to say, 2023. And the books that got me back into reading at that time were actually the Greenbone Saga books by Fonda Lee. I picked up the first book because I had seen someone, I think it was Emily at Books with Emily Fox, who had read that series and loved it. And I found that I have a lot of things in common with her reading wise. So I was like, I'm going to try that series. And I read them all in 2 weeks. And from then on, I was just like, this is my thing. Reading is my hobby. We had just bought a new house. So a lot of the things that I had taken up my time before that were now different because I was in a different place with a new house. And I just started reading. And then I think, the next year is what I started my channel. So, all right, next question. Do you listen to audiobooks? If so, what is your favorite? Okay. So I don't listen to audiobooks very much. I have been diagnosed with adult ADHD, and that kind of explained a lot of things for me. And one of the things that it has explained for me is why it is that I struggle so much with listening to audiobooks, because I cannot listen to an audiobook without my attention just going completely somewhere else. I've got a good 3 to 4 minutes every time I listen to an audiobook before my mind starts thinking about something else and I realized I missed 2 chapters. Speeding up the books helps a little, but I also don't like how they sound when they're sped up, so I don't like to do that. So I don't do a lot of audiobooks, and I have just come to kind of accept that I do not have the ability to be able to divide my attention to be able to doing an audiobook while something else is going on. This is hard for me because I really want to be good at multitasking, and I am not. I have to do one thing at a time. But in terms of audiobooks that I think are great, I have been listening very slowly to the Discworld books. I've been on Guards for like 6 months, but I'm getting through it. I may end up finishing it by reading it with my eyes, you know, but they are fantastic audiobooks. They are just so well acted out and so entertaining and not super long because none of the Discworld books are super long. So I would definitely recommend checking those out if you're looking for a good audiobook. Next question. Are you the type of reader that can read multiple books at a time, or do you just read one book? I am not the kind of person who can read multiple books at one time. I think this, again, goes along with the thing with the audiobooks where like I can't keep that straight. I have to read one book and get through that book. That's why it's always kind of hard for me when I'm doing like, I love doing buddy reads. I think it's so fun to be able to discuss a book, but sometimes when I do one, I do struggle because I don't want to read it too fast, but I also have a hard time reading something else at the same time because my head is still in that other world. And it's hard for me to go back and forth between worlds. So when I see people that have like 4 or 5 books going at the same time, first of all, I'm like, how? How do you do that? And I'm also kind of envious because I would love to be able to read multiple books and I cannot. Okay, the next question is, do you like cozy books? What are some cozy recommendations? I have a complicated relationship with cozy books. I sometimes like cozy books. I did enjoy Legends and Lattes. I do enjoy the Emily Wilde series, which I would consider to be cozy adjacent. I did read The Keeper of Lonely Spirits, which is over here by E.M. Anderson earlier this year, and that's a cozy book, and I really loved it. And I've enjoyed Someone You Can Build a Nest In by John Wiswell, which is cozy horror. But the thing that all the books that I tend to like in the cozy genre have in common is that they have, in spite of that cozy feeling, they have a fairly forward moving plot line. Because books that are cozy, that are just kind of like about the cozy vibe and not really about the plot, I really do struggle with, because if a book starts losing my attention, if I don't feel like it has momentum, I have a hard time continuing forward. So yeah, I like that cozy feeling. I love A Found Family. I love all that stuff, but I'm really picky about the cozy books that I do like. So if you have any more recommendations kind of on that line, do let me know. Is there another genre or a sci-fi fantasy subgenre that you would like to tap more into? So you'll know, I read a lot of sci-fi fantasy. I do read other things. I have been reading more kind of literary style fiction or literary sci-fi fantasy kind of things in that genre. So I have been getting a little bit more into that. In terms of sci-fi fantasy, I actually don't feel like I have read as many epic fantasies as a lot of other people here on BookTube have. And that's just because I started later. I missed out on a lot of those, and I am trying to start catching up now slowly. So one of my goals is to kind of get into that, maybe with some of the classics of the genre. I mean, I've read Lord of the Rings, but I haven't read a lot of the other sci-fi fantasy books that really kind of shaped the genre, and I'm very interested in that history. So probably epic fantasy, but also classic fantasy sci-fi. Classic sci-fi probably in particular, because I've struggled with that. So I definitely want to try to read more of them. If you haven't always been a sci-fi fantasy reader, what book opened that for you? Or what sci-fi fantasy book would you say was your favorite as a child? So I was a pretty bookish child, and I read almost everything. Like, I went to the library and I just checked random stuff out because that's what I did. It was my hobby. I read probably 20 books a week as a kid. It's so crazy. But my favorite genre back then was mystery. So I read a lot of mystery. I read a lot of Agatha Christie, a lot of classic stuff. Then I branched out some, but I didn't really branch out so much into sci-fi and fantasy. So I will tell you that the books that got me into reading sci-fi and fantasy were actually books that my dad owned in his collection. And that was primarily classic sci-fi. So I did read, Asimov and Ray Bradbury. And Ray Bradbury, particularly his short stories, I think those were the things that really got me into science fiction. And then I was also like a super avid Star Trek person. And I used to read the Star Trek books, which got me into reading a lot of that stuff. But I didn't really get into serious fantasy and sci-fi until the last couple of years. I don't know if that's a good answer, but I haven't always been a sci-fi fantasy reader, but I did always read sci-fi and fantasy, and I don't know if that makes any sense, but that's my answer. When you shop at the Friends of the Library or secondhand bookstore, do you go with a list? I find myself getting overwhelmed and then unable to make a decision. I have a list of books that I have rated 4 or 5 stars that I would buy if I found them secondhand. So that's definitely a list that I always have on my phone. I keep that list with me all the time so that I can remember what books I want to look for in the different sections. Other than that, so if I go to the sci-fi fantasy section in my Friends of the Library store, I will kind of buy things that I've heard of or things that are from publishers that I know I like. So if I'm like looking at Orbit or Tor books, I will sometimes look them up on Goodreads and see what the ratings are like before I buy them. But sometimes I just go ahead and pick them up because I'm curious about them. I do get overwhelmed by the general fiction and mystery sections because I don't feel as knowledgeable. Mystery is really bad because there are so many mysteries that are released every year. I don't know what the sales figures are, but I feel like mystery is a really big genre and I don't know what to buy. I don't. And I don't know what books I have to have read the other books in the series before I can read the one they have at the store. And so if I haven't heard of it in general, I'm probably not going to pick it up from that section or from general fiction, but I will pick up stuff I haven't heard of from sci-fi fantasy if it has something else going for it, like a publisher I trust or a really intriguing premise or a really pretty cover. I will try stuff out that way. What are your top sci-fi recs for someone who's brand new to the genre and trying to read more sci-fi? So I think a couple of things. I think, first of all, if you've read fantasy before, I would recommend some books that are kind of sci-fi fantasy blends. In particular, I'm thinking about the Locked Tomb series and Gideon the Ninth, because that's going to be something that is set in space, but isn't necessarily going to be difficult to read. Another thing I would probably recommend would be sticking to kind of the cozier or lighter side of science fiction to start, particularly if you are intimidated, as I sometimes am, by the hard sci-fi and the feeling that you need to know everything about all the science. The Last Gifts of the Universe, which I have back here by Riley August, that's going to be a cozy sci-fi that I would recommend, especially if you like cozy fiction in general. It is just fantastic, and it has a cat. Also, great for people starting out, John Scalzi. Just in general, John Scalzi. If you liked Star Trek, I would recommend starting with Red Shirts because you're going to laugh. If you just like humorous sci-fi kind of in general, maybe something like the Kaiju Preservation Society, I think would be a pretty good one to start with. Or if you want something more traditionally science fiction-y, The Old Man's War series. There's nothing in there that's intimidating, and I just find him to be very, very approachable as an author, so that would probably be another good place to start out. Which books would you say formed you as the reader you are today? Which were your favorite, most influential books growing up? Okay, so growing up, as I said, my parents were big readers. They were both newspaper reporters. And so we always had a ton of literature lying around the house, and they didn't police my reading. I got to read kind of like whatever. And I know that I really, really loved The Hobbit by Tolkien. That was kind of one of my favorite things that I remember picking up pretty early on. Really enjoyed that. I also, a lot of the time, lived with my grandparents. So we had a lot of older literature laying around. So in terms of like books that I read as a child, I've talked about Nancy Drew a lot, and Nancy Drew was very formative for me, but I'm not going to talk about Nancy Drew right now. How about a book that I bet you haven't heard of called The Five Little Peppers and How They Grew? It kind of feels like a formative Little Women or something. It's the story of this family with all these siblings in it growing up together, and I was kind of obsessed with it. And I don't feel like anybody has read it now, other books kind of from that same time period. I really loved the book Cheaper by the Dozen. Not like the Steve Martin movie. The Steve Martin movie is fine, but it's nothing like the book, which I was obsessed with. And a lot of kind of other things like that. I just read everything. I loved Heidi. I was very, very into Heidi. I remember that, but just anything I could get my hands on, I would read. Okay, so we are going to move on to section 2. So this video is not 4 hours long. And section 2 is questions about BookTube, kind of more in general. So, what's something that you've learned about yourself since starting BookTube, either as a person or reader or creator or all of the above? So the first thing that I've learned about myself in terms of my reading, I think, is that I'm not nearly as much of a mood reader as I thought I was, because I had never done TBRs. Before starting this channel, it was just, well, what do I have? What's at the library? What can I pick up? I had never done a TBR, and I did not think I would like them because I thought I was a mood reader, but it turns out that I enjoy having that structure. I don't always read everything on my TBR or only books that are on my TBR, but it was a genuine shock to me that this was something that I actually really enjoyed. I also think that I learned that I am a lot better at following a schedule than I thought I was. This is kind of something that I've learned as I've been on BookTube. Like for the first probably 6 months, I was just like, well, I'm going to do a video and upload it kind of whenever. And then about December, January this year, I decided I'm going to do 2 videos a week and I'm going to put them up on the same 2 days every week, which has been Sundays and Thursdays, although I'm thinking about moving to Monday, Thursday for the summer because I don't think anybody's home on Sundays. I mean, I'm not. So being able to follow that schedule and follow through with that is actually like a surprise to me. I would not say that I am the most organized person ever, but I have been able to get myself to plan videos, to film them when I say I'm going to film them. I mean, it's just, I don't know. It's been something that I feel like I've grown into and that has helped me grow, not just in BookTube, but in my life in general, at being able to follow through with stuff. So I have really enjoyed that. What prompted you to start talking books on YouTube? I just really love BookTube. I definitely watched a ton of BookTube, especially as I said before, like during the pandemic, started watching it and then kind of kept it up. I don't watch as much book talk. I do have TikTok and I watch TikTok. Who doesn't? But I don't find that the algorithm seems to cater itself to me super well all the time. But I do have people, creators that I really love over there as well. But BookTube, because of the possibility of being able to talk about things for longer, appealed to me more, especially because I am not really capable of being short-winded about anything. And then I just had a lot of equipment because during COVID, we were kind of like in charge of the live stream for our church at the time. And so we had a lot of equipment that we had purchased to help with that. And so I already had a lot of like microphone and camera stuff. So I was like, well, this is going to waste. So let's just try it and see what happens. And to my surprise, I actually really liked it. What would you say to someone who is thinking about starting a BookTube channel but is scared or thinks they can't do it? What would I say? I would say that if you feel self-conscious about yourself or your own presentation or talking into a camera because that feels goofy, I would just let you know that everybody feels that way. When I first started out, like looking into the camera was the hardest thing for me because it feels unnatural to be talking to a camera until you get used to it. And it becomes easier and easier over time, but it's going to be hard to start. I would also say you don't need fancy equipment. If you have a phone, most phones have a camera that is totally fine for uploading BookTube content, where it's not really so much about the way your videos look as it is about the way that you talk about books and your, just your presence being in the video. So I'd say don't be afraid. It's also a very friendly community. So I would recommend trying it out. How do you make friends with other booktubers? So I think that there are a couple of different ways. One thing is just by commenting on other people's videos, by getting yourself involved in community events. There are a lot of great readathons and things like that that go on that make it pretty easy to be able to find a community. I would also say that participating in reading sprints where they have the time where you get to like chat and you get to know people, I think that's another good way to get to know other booktubers. It is interesting to me because I don't have a lot of real life friends who read that this is the place and the people that I get to talk about books with. And it is just like so freeing to have that. But it can be hard. It can be hard to feel like, you're new and you don't know anyone. And I am an introverted person in real life. I am somebody who finds it very difficult to go out and meet new people. Like if there's a social situation that I'm invited to where I don't know anyone, I'm not going. Like, I'm just not. I'm just going to tell you right now, I might say that I'm going, but I'm not going to show up. That is not a thing I'm going to do. So I understand it's difficult, but I think it's worth it to try and put yourself out there. So, kind of like more like fun or personal questions. And the first one is, what are your hobbies outside of reading and YouTube? So I am somebody who has a lot of creative hobbies all the time. I have in the past run a fairly popular knitting and crochet and then sewing blog back when we had blogs. I was sewing. I was known as Stitchy Witch. If any of you are from those days, I'm still here. And I do still sew and crochet and knit and all of those things, but not as much as I used to. I really want to get back into sewing. I do have a room in the house that is my sewing room, but since we moved in like 2 years ago, I still have not gotten around to getting it actually organized enough, and I don't have a great cutting space, so I'm making excuses, right? I need to get back into it because I used to sew all of my clothes and now I don't. And I really want to get back into that because I can't find anything in the stores that I like as much as the stuff that I make for myself. I'd be curious to know what you do for work outside of YouTube, if you do work. Well, I do work. So I am an administrative manager for a retirement community. And so the retirement community that I work at is a place that has everything from seniors that are independent in their own apartments all the way to skilled nursing care and kind of everything in between. And administrative manager means that I am kind of the office manager. I also manage a team of 7 receptionists. I am in charge of ordering. I do a lot of kind of office paperwork kind of stuff. I also run our volunteer program. So I recruit and train and schedule volunteers for all the different things that we do with that. But I really enjoy it because I really enjoy working with seniors. And I am somebody who definitely has that drive to want to feel like I'm helping people all the time. And I don't know that I could do a job where I don't have that feeling because my whole life I've been in education, or for a time, I was a music director for a church. And that was something where I felt like, I was helping people. And if I ever didn't feel like I was helping people, or when I didn't feel like I was helping people anymore, I quit. So that's something that's really important to me, having that aspect of being able to help, being able to be a joy for other people in their lives at times when maybe things haven't gone so well for them. So that's what I do for a living, and I do really like it. And it's got a super like regular schedule. My general schedule is like 7 a.m. to 3:30, and then I have the rest of the day to myself. And unlike some other jobs I've had, it does not creep into the rest of my life. So that's why I have time to do this. What is your favorite movie or TV series to rewatch? So my favorite TV series of all time is The X-Files. I absolutely am, or was, or kind of still am, obsessed with The X-Files. My other favorite one that I will rewatch over and over again is Buffy the Vampire Slayer and Angel. Both of those series, I don't know, they just hit me at the right time. I'm, about the same age as the characters in those shows, so really was obsessed with those and can watch them. Some seasons are better than others, but I can watch them over and over again. And The X-Files, just love The X-Files. Does it hold up? Some of it's a little bit ridiculous, but I don't care. I just love it. Gillian Anderson, David Duchovny, yes, forever. Are you a morning person or a night owl? So kind of both, which is bad, right? I've always been a night owl. I was always somebody who could not go to bed at an early time, or I would just lay in bed awake. And that has changed for me. I think especially because my partner Sean is a teacher and we carpool to work because his school is very near where I work. And he has to be there extremely early, as those of you who are high school teachers probably know. So I have kind of adjusted myself to getting up at 5:30 or 6 o'clock every morning and going into work and keeping my schedule early and then going to bed. Like I will go up to bed by like 9:30 every night. And then sometimes I will unfortunately read for 2 to 3 hours. So I'm not saying that I'm getting a lot of sleep, but I would say I'm much more of a morning person now because I get so much done in the mornings, and then the afternoons, I'm kind of useless. Afternoon, just not for me. So I have changed over time. People told me that would happen when you got older, and I was like, no, it won't. Yeah, it did. Not book related, but I'm curious. Did you study music in college? Can't remember if you've mentioned that from one classical musician to another. And I know this I didn't write down who asked all these questions when I was doing my thing, but I know that was Chelsea from Libraries and Lattes, because we have definitely talked about music before. So yes, I have an undergraduate degree in music performance in voice and piano. And I did for many years own and run my own piano and voice studio. So that's something I did for a long time. And then I also taught at the university level for a while. I have a master's degree in choral conducting. And yes, I don't really do any of these things for a living anymore. I reached a point in my life when I decided I needed, a regular schedule and benefits. But for many, many years, I mean, for 20 years, I was a full-time professional musician, and it's still something that I do on the side, not as much as I probably would like to or should. But just this past week, I had a couple of smaller gigs for playing the piano that I did, and I love music. It is interesting to me because music is something a lot of people do as a hobby. And people always said, if you do your hobby for a job, that's hard. And I was like, no, it won't be. But at a certain point, it was, because it was not so much about the joy of creativity and art and making music as it was about, I've got to do this many things so that I can eat. And although I do miss it, I don't miss the hustle. And yeah, so yes, I do have 2 music degrees that I don't use that much anymore, but it definitely informs a lot of my opinions and feelings about life and about the importance of creativity and the arts. And then I had somebody ask me about my cat, Bones, and the question was, what is his most spoiled habit? Okay, so my cat Bones, I got him. I was working at a church, and the youth minister went away on like an Appalachian spring break service trip with the youth group, and she came back with a cat, and that cat had kittens, and Bones is one of those kittens. And I took him, and I always say he's like the most expensive free cat ever, because he's had a lot of like super serious medical problems. And I'm gonna take a moment here and tell those of you that have male cats, you need to watch them and make sure that they never have any trouble using the litter box, because he did ended up having like repeated blockages and had to have eventually a pretty extreme and extremely expensive surgery done when he was about 3 years old. But it was worth it. It was worth it because he's my baby. But watch your cats, because that's the second cat that I've had that had that same issue. So definitely, it's not uncommon. Just watch. So he's pretty spoiled because we went through all of that. He had his surgery the week before I myself had a surgery during the pandemic, and we were like both at home recovering together, I would say. So he's very, very spoiled. In terms of like how spoiled he is, okay, so this chair that I'm sitting in, this is my comfy chair, my comfy reading chair. He thinks it's his. And he will come upstairs every morning after he eats his breakfast and paw at the door until I let him in, so that he can lay down in this chair and sleep in the blanket all day. He also has learned that he can get a treat from me for any reason. Like, we just have times of day when I'm like, do you want your bedtime treat? And he's like, yes, I would like my bedtime treat. It's all a bad habit, but he's my baby. So no regrets, but he's very spoiled. And he likes to interrupt my reading. If I'm reading, he's going to try to knock it out of my hand. And then I have, do you script your videos or film more off the cuff? This probably should have gone in the other section, but so I don't script my videos like word for word. I will make myself an outline of the things I want to talk about, and then I will try to work around the words. Now I can't talk. I will try to make it sound natural. I'm not going to script it out word for word. I don't have, some people have like the little prompter in front of their camera that they use. I don't have that. And I don't know that I would want to have that, because I do really enjoy going off on tangents sometimes and that kind of thing. So I make an outline, but I don't script. And I couldn't, because I don't have one of those, I couldn't read things word for word anyway. So, and then also should have been in the other section, what camera or microphone or editing software do you use? So I have a Sony It's a ZV-10, I think, is what I use for a camera most of the time. I also have a DJI Osmo Pocket 3, which is like a little, hang on, I'll get it. It's like a little kind of funny tracker camera. So it'll kind of move with you. So when I do like vlogging and things like that, I'm usually using that. And then I also have, you can see here, I'm using a DJI microphone that came with this. I also have Rode microphones, the little square ones that everyone has, and I like those too. I used those for a really long time until I got this. I like these a little bit better because they don't pick up as much ambient noise, and I live right by the train tracks, so I kept having to stop my filming every single time a train went by, and that was not ideal. So I started using this instead, and I'm a little bit happier with it. In terms of filming software, I am still using CapCut Pro on the PC, and I'm pretty happy with that, but I do still want to learn something else because I don't want to be tied to that piece of software forever. All right, and that is all of the questions. I just want to thank everyone again for subscribing, for tuning in, for being here, for making it all the way through what's probably going to be a pretty excessively long video. And if you have any questions that I did not answer, please leave them in the comments down below, and I will answer those questions as soon as I can. And if you're feeling quiet, but you've been here and you've been watching my videos, I would love to know that you're here. Please leave me a confetti emoji. And with that, I hope that you all have a fantastic day. I will see you in the next video. Goodbye.